kind of soul-sucking. Well, I have turned the heel, a lot of ends to weave in. If it's too big, it's too big. So nice. Yes? No. Okay, I filmed this video once and the camera did not actually save the file. So second time's the charm. Hi folks, it's the end of June, which means time for another knitting roundup. So let's start off with the first thing, the finished object this month, which is my prospect tee that I'm currently wearing. This is a pattern by Tori Yu, and I knit this up in Farmer Daughters Fibers, Foxy Lady in the color Flight of the Crane. So the yarn is a fingering weight merino silk blend, and the pattern by Tori Yu is this like boxy oversized tee that features this all over striped texture pattern. It's a very easy pattern to like texture to remember because it's just like stockinette broken up by these purl rows and then some like kind of like a single rib row where you're doing like purl knit, purl knit, purl knit. And yeah, I really am really proud of this finished object. Definitely was one where I tried it on and was like, okay, trust the blocking, because the blocking definitely like opened it up and helped it like become so like nice and flowy and drapey. And I think the sizing I got is just right. So I did a size 4. However, something to note, my gauge was a little bit off. I think it was like 25 stitches and 41 rows, which meant I think I had a slightly larger gauge than Tori Yu did. So originally I was kind of on the fence between doing a size 4 or a size 5. I was kind of in between where size 4 was going to be a little bit too small, but size 5 was going to be a little bit too big. I have a 40-inch bust circumference, and it recommended like a 4 inches of positive ease, which would be 44. But I think it like 42 or 46 were the size difference between the 4 and the 5. Now, because my gauge was a little bit off, I did the math and realized my gauge knitting at the size 4 would give me a 44-inch bust shirt. So I did that, and it fits perfectly. It fits exactly how I was hoping for. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think the pattern and yarn pairing worked really well, where it's this like silk merino, so it's going to be a little bit more warm weather friendly, but the merino gives it this like softness and a really nice like memory with the drape of the silk. And I think it's going to be a good like kind of statement top where I can dress it up, dress it down, but also potentially also like layer it later in the year under things. Like I think this would look really nice under a blazer for a more businessy look, but also like even under, I would say, my book club cardigan. That's the cable sweater. I think it's a subtle enough texture that it's not overwhelming, that you'd have too much going on with too much texture on texture. So yes, very happy with this. I'm really looking forward to being able to wear this out and about. Yeah, this is my first time wearing it for this video. Like I put it on and saw myself in the mirror and was just like, it worked. Now let's talk about some works in progress. So I knit this mostly over the month of June, so that's a pretty good progress. I did a decent amount of knitting in June. There was a little bit less so than in May, since May was spent like recovering from surgery, and my kiddo was still in school. There was a lot of just like being able to sit down and knit. I was still working over the month of May, but it was very light as my job was kind of wrapping up. But moving into June, my kiddo's out of school, so there's been a lot of going to the zoo and the parks and museums and out and about doing stuff, parenting. And I've also had a lot of time that has been taken up with applying to jobs, which can be a full-time job. and is kind of soul-sucking. So there's been some stress knitting that has happened, and some like turning to knitting as a coping mechanism, just with like figure out this new schedule and everything. So let's dive into the works in progress. First of all, sock. So I think last time I updated you, I had done like partway through the foot of this sock. Well, I have turned the heel, and now I'm working on the leg. And looking at the other sock that I still have to weave in all the ends and sew down the cuff, I think I really only have like another inch to go and then do the cuff, and then this sock will be done. I've had a little bit more progress on this, especially in the last week or two, because I've been taking this with me when we've been going on like walks around the neighborhood or at the playground at the zoo. And I think I'm gonna definitely do a few more socks over the summer, just because they're such a good warm weather knit. You don't have tons and tons of fabric sitting on you, and they're so easy to pack and bring with me to places. I just, can tuck them in this little bag. I can tuck them into a purse. Sometimes I've even had this bag, it does have a strap I can put my wrist through, but sometimes I've even just like put the strap through my belt. And so it's very easy for me to drop the project whenever I need to have my hands available. So yes, a little bit of progress on a sock. The next work in progress has the most amount of progress on it, and that is my sweet shop blanket. So I have done, trying to show this whole thing because it's starting to get really big. I have done the pink, orange, yellow, green, and blue. This is the first time you're seeing it probably. Oh, Hilo's having a dream. She's barking in her sleep. So I actually have one more color. And that is the purple, and I'm knitting this up in comfy fingering held double to get the DK weight. And yeah, this is going to be for my daughter. My plan for this is that this will be the blanket that goes with her to school for her like nap quiet time at school, and then once she's done with that, or if she decides she doesn't want to take it to school, it can just live on her bed. But she's very excited. She's been having fun like counting all of the colors. And yeah, I'll put up the mock-up I did of the like color layout. So I'll do the row of purple next after the blue, and then I'm going to do pink next, and basically each color will have 2 rows or 2 stripes. I think the pink ends up having 3. But yes, I'm doing the small rectangle version of this. I've been really enjoying this pattern. I really enjoy the yarn. Comfy is a cotton acrylic blend, so it's going to be good for washability, and also it's surprisingly very lightweight and like drapey, and just very soft and comfy. So yeah, and washability, definitely something I considered, because this is going to get washed a whole lot, especially if she takes it with her to school. So the construction with this is you start at a corner and you knit a triangle, and then you switch to the contrast color or main color, whichever one it is in the pattern. I think it's designated as the contrast color. You could do just single squares and not switch to a second color if you wanted. I really liked the kind of like pendant flag look that you get with having that contrast color. And I think also by having the like fingering weight held double, it creates this nice drapey fabric that's a little bit lighter than a DK weight. This was designed to be great for using up advents. I think it's in the pattern she says like each square should use basically a mini skein. So, being able to use up all of those advents, especially colors that go together of that fingering weight yarn. But I decided to just buy yarn for it and make it because I haven't gotten any advents. Now I will say this has a lot of ends to weave in. You can see I haven't weaved in all of the ends for the blue. She does, I'm very glad she suggests weaving in the ends as you go. I have not been doing it after every single block. I have been completing a color and then weaving in the ends, which up until the blue was pretty reasonable. The blue, I've weaved in the ends in a couple of different sessions just because I get a little bored with it. But the reason you have so many ends to weave in is, so like on the end, you pick up one direction, so you've got a, you know, normal amount of ends. But for these center pieces, you pick up and then you break the yarn so that you can start from the corner. So that means you end up with 4 ends for each triangle in these kind of more central areas. And it adds up very quickly. So yeah, I'm very glad that I have been weaving it in kind of as I'm going, as I'm finishing the color stripes, because otherwise I would have like 3 or 4 hours at least of ends to weave in, and that's a lot. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this project. It has been, I'm probably going to start losing momentum on it because it's getting to the size where I'm knitting with a blanket in my lap, and I don't want to take that like when I go and sit in the backyard while my kiddo's playing. I don't want to have that sitting on top of me. If we've just come in and I'm hot, I don't want it sitting on top of me. It's also getting to the size where it's a little bit harder to bring with me. I did the first couple of squares like just bringing it with me to the playground and stuff like that, because at that point it was small and easy to bring around. But yeah, now it's kind of at the size where this is really going to become a like evening, maybe bringing it with me to knitting meetups, but something where I'm inside, there's air conditioning on, and I'm going to be here a while and not need to get up and move around. So yes, hoping to finish this by sometime in August so that it will be finished before the school year. The next work in progress is very recent. I started it yesterday, and that is a Esther cardigan, not Esther, an Esther sweater for my daughter. So the Esther sweater is this diamond pattern, all over patterned sweater by Petite Knit. She has an adult version as well as a junior version, and I think maybe even a baby version. This is the kids version. I'm doing the size 3 to 4. I'm hoping it turns out the right size. I did do a gauge swatch for the first time knitting my kiddo something. I did a gauge swatch because usually I just kind of wing it and figure if it's too big, it's too big. There is the gauge swatch, and I put this in the washer and dryer because I'm knitting this out of Knit Picks Swish, which is a superwash merino. So in theory, it should be fine. And yeah, it held up just great. I think when I actually finish the sweater, I am going to block it, just like soak it and block it and not just throw it in the wash, just so it gets that like initial block, because this kind of got a little crinkled up and everything, and I think that might help that center diamond even out a little bit if I were to block it. But I think, you know, just seeing how it washed that once, it should hold up pretty well. I'll talk more about it, but I picked up this yarn originally with the idea to make her a Ava cardigan, because I wanted something that would go with her school uniform. She has to wear red tops with her school uniform. They're a little lax with like sweatshirts and stuff like that, but I thought it would be fun to have a red sweater. But then after I got the yarn, I realized she already had a red cardigan. It was a store-bought cardigan, but still she already had a red cardigan. But she doesn't have any like red pullover sweaters, and she got a lot of use out of her storm sweater. I did knit up a gauge swatch using this yarn for the storm sweater. I didn't love the way the texture was looking in this yarn. I think the Swish doesn't have the most amazing stitch definition, and I think the storm sweater, just to really make all of those different textures shine, needs something that has really good stitch definition. But I like the idea of doing an all over texture. So I was looking around and I ran across the Esther sweater, and so I decided to try it out. I know in my previous video I was saying I wanted to try some non-petite knit patterns, but I wasn't finding like an all over texture pattern that I liked that would use this weight of yarn. So we're going with another petite knit. Now I think I mentioned that I'm knitting her the size 3/4. Now with doing the gauge swatch, I also took her measurements, and according to her chest circumference and petite knit's notes, I should be making her a size 1 to 2. That seems wrong. She is a petite kiddo, but like I do wish petite knit had schematics in her patterns that showed a little bit more of like the arm length, the body length. Like she does list body length, but she doesn't have arm length necessarily in the information at the beginning. Just to, especially with kids, to figure out what size to knit to. So yeah, I am doing the 3 to 4, which means it is going to be a little bit more oversized. Now I did the storm sweater in the 2 to 3, and it now is fitting her, like width-wise, it is still oversized, but like length-wise, it's definitely getting on the short size. So I'm hoping the 3 to 4 will work out, and I may actually do the length more in the 4 to 5. I don't know. I'm going to see. I'm definitely going to do the like back and front and then join in the round, and then I think I'm going to have her try it on just to see how oversized it is, because I think looking at the kids patterns, I'm realizing what it is that some people have issue with the petite knit sizing, is that it seems to be here is the amount of positive ease, and it is consistent across all of the sizes instead of gauging them more as a like percentage to get a similar look throughout all of the sizes. You know, that like and you need to do an adjusted percentage, but yeah, I think that might be part of it, and also why I feel like especially her like smaller sizing on the junior sizes are so oversized, because you know, when you've got a 20-inch chest circumference and you're supposed to have 7 inches of positive ease, well, that's going to look a lot different than 7 inches of positive ease on a 30-inch chest circumference, like just percentage-wise. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I figure worst case, she grows into it. That is the nice thing about kids' clothes, especially at this age. Like, they're going to grow into it. I know there's a certain point, because I ran into this as a kid, where people would buy me, like, size larges when I was, like, 12. And I was just like, this is an adult large, and I barely fit into an adult small. What are you thinking? But a little bit oversized, I feel like, is fine. It gives some room to grow. And maybe she doesn't wear it this year, but she wears it next year. And even if she goes to a school that doesn't have red as like their uniform by the time she's wearing this, I feel like it's still going to be a really nice like holiday sweater or just a red staple sweater. All right, so that is it for my works in progress. Now let's talk acquisitions, because I have a decent amount this month. Knit Picks had their summer sale. I had credit to use for the month. So combined together, I kind of got free yarn. That's how I'm trying to think about it, telling myself. My yarn storage is yelling at me, being like, where are you going to put this? I haven't thought that through. But yes, let's get into the acquisitions. So first of all, I did get, I think it was 6 balls of the Swish DK in the color Sereno. That is what I'm using to make my daughter's Esther sweater. And yes, so I'll definitely have, I got maybe an extra skein or 2 of this than what I necessarily needed, but I've got some other Swish in my stash that I figured I could potentially pair it with to make hats, make another sweater for her, and the red would definitely get some use out of that. I also got a sweaters quantity of palette in the color Spearmint and Nimbus, and I am going to make a sheep sweater out of this. So I'm going to do the background in the Spearmint and then the sheep in the Nimbus. I think that's going to look so nice, be a good color on me. And I am thinking about potentially doing like the little lambs, like a duplicate stitch or like the heart above the lamb, doing that, and or adding in like one of the sheepdog motifs and doing that to look kind of like Hilo. I do have some like orangey palette left over from another project that I used years ago. I used palette with years ago that would be about the same color of Hilo. So that might be fun. I did have, like, Ryan suggested that. I really like that idea. I also had the thought of like, oh no, what if I do that and she passes away in the next couple of years? Am I going to be able to wear the sweater? And I think, yes, I will, because it's not going to be like her face. It will be more of an homage. But that is something that like is in the back of my head, just because she's a senior dog. She's getting a little, it's getting a little harder for her to get around. Her joints are starting to hurt a little bit more. And yeah, we're just, she seems to be in good health, but there have been a couple times where she's been like really, really asleep. And it's been the like, are you breathing? I'm going to watch your chest for a few minutes to make sure that you're actually breathing, because I'm worried you aren't. Yeah. The things that you run into when you have elder pets and you just didn't think about that when they were puppies. But, you know, when it's like, well, you're at the age where it's around the age that like, yeah, it could be your time. And people would be like, they lived a long, happy life. But I am hoping that, she lives many, many more years, and that's not something I have to think about for a while, because we love Hilo, and she's the good dog. She's the best dog. And then I got a third project's quantity of yarn, and I enjoyed working with the Comfy so much for the blanket that I got some to make something for me. I got some Comfy Sport in the color Copper. And my plan for this is to do a Mountain Laurel top, which is a pattern by Andrea Goggin. I talked about it in my tank top video. I wasn't necessarily planning on doing this right away, but I was trying to figure out a sport weight project because I liked the Comfy and didn't want to do a fingering weight project. And this just looks so great. So I did do the gauge swatch of this. So the Mountain Laurel top is a all over lace and cable. The gauge swatch, she suggests you do just the lace. And yeah, this isn't necessarily a color I have picked out in the past. I've tended to steer clear of yellows and oranges, but looking at like the color theory stuff, I should be a soft autumn or like autumn-y, and copper's definitely in that. So yeah, like this reads much closer in color on camera to the red in this. I'm hoping that once I get in color correct, I can actually show the correct color. But what do you think? Do you think this is a good color on me? I'm on the fence. I think I like it. I think I'm just having a hard time because I haven't really gotten browns or coppers before. So it's new. And I'm not used to seeing this color and considering it for myself. So I'd love to know your input. Like, yes, no. Let's talk about plans for July. So I'm going to keep working on the Sweet Shop blanket. Probably finish that in August, just because it is getting to that point where it's a little bit harder to just pick up and work on wherever. gonna finish that sock. I would like to start another pair of socks because I think they're gonna be really great summer projects on the go. And I'd like to just make some more socks for gift knits, for myself, for my family. And then I also want to make some progress on the Esther sweater. I'm not as motivated on ooh, I need to finish that because she's not going to get to wear that till the fall, so it's going to be a couple more months. And kid sizes, toddler, preschooler sizes knit up pretty quickly. But it is nice having something that makes a little bit more progress. So I may end up finishing that in July if I just feel like I need to finish something. The other thing I should probably update you on is my Staffin top, my Staffin tank. I was doing the Staffin Light. In the previous month's video, I talked about finishing up and being I don't think the gauge is right. Or something's off because I ran out of yarn and I should have had enough yarn to finish this. I figured out why. So I did do the project, I did block it before binding off and realized after blocking it that my gauge was completely off. And I was trying to figure out, how did this happen? Was my gauge just really off because I was knitting most of it while I was recovering from surgery? Did that affect my gauge, the tension? But I knit other things while I was recovering and didn't have gauge issues with that. Did I have an issue reading the pattern? Did I do the wrong size? I pulled out my gauge swatch and was yep, nope, the gauge swatch I have is a different gauge than this. So it's not just well, I did the gauge, I forgot the gauge swatch or something like that. And just had completely different gauge than the designer. And then I was looking at some pictures, progress pictures, and I was this is interesting. I have my interchangeable needles while I was working on the body of that sweater. I was supposed to be using a 3mm needle for this. My interchangeable needles don't have a 3mm needle, and those are the 3.5mm needles. That's why it's so off gauge. I was using the completely wrong needle size for this project. So, mystery solved. I probably don't need to order another skein of yarn. And luckily I figured this out before I ordered another skein of yarn. So I have unraveled one skein's worth. I still need to do the second one. But, I blocked it. So as I'm unraveling it, it's ramen noodle yarn. So to get it straighten the yarn back out, what I ended up doing is I had a small pot of boiling water. I got it boiling and then I lowered it to a simmer. And I pulled the yarn through with the lid, the yarn was between the pot and the lid, so that helped hold a little bit of tension, and steamed the yarn. And then I wrapped it up around my Swift. It may have gone a little bit faster had I used my ball winder, but my concern was, okay, the yarn is a little damp as it's coming through the steam. I don't want it getting caked up into a damp cake and then having mildew stuff or any issues with that. Whereas the Swift, I figured, okay, it will help hold a little bit of tension, so kind of work out a little bit more of those kinks even after the steaming has done its job, which made a huge difference. And then it can kind of dry on the Swift, and then I'll just cake it up from there. So I am planning on restarting my Staffin Light. This will be the 4th time, because the first time I cast it on and I realized after casting it on and doing a little bit that I really needed to size down. I learned a little bit about sizing at the knitting retreat and was I should size it down to get the kind of fit that I want. And then the second time, I don't remember what exactly happened, but I realized I needed to start over. I had only done the back and picked up for a shoulder, so it wasn't that big of a deal. And then this third time, I just used the wrong needle size. Not sure how that happened. I was probably just preoccupied with surgery coming up that I just didn't pay attention and knit basically the whole thing wrong. So we're starting over. But it's not the pattern's fault. It's completely, all of this has been my fault. So yes, I still want to make it. And I will say, like, seeing it blocked out, like seeing it blocked, even though it was the wrong gauge, it still gave me such a good idea of the project and how it's going to look when it's finished that I am excited to make it. I think it's going to be a really great piece in my wardrobe. I'm excited to wear it. I love the color of the yarn. So yes, that is a potential thing I might do in July. We're gonna see, because just after having started it so many times, I do feel like I need a little bit of a break from it. I also need a little bit of a break from doing so much fingering weight projects, which is part of the reason I cast on the Esther sweater and am planning on doing the Mountain Laurel. Just give my hands a little bit of a break from so much fingering weight. And who knows how much time I'm going to actually have in July for knitting. Right now I'm trying to embrace the like stay-at-home parent who gets to enjoy the summer break with their kid, but I'm trying to find full-time work, and who knows when that might happen. There are jobs that I'm in some stage of being considered for that I don't know when they're going to actually get back to me. I've tried to get a timeline, and it seems like maybe they don't actually know. You know, things in the world are crazy right now, and that I'm sure is affecting hiring timelines. So I'm trying to remind myself of that, but that would definitely affect how much time I have for knitting, if and when I get a full-time job. When I get a full-time job. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna put it out in the universe that it's going to happen. If you are also in any kind of job search, like, take care of your mental health. Man, yeah. I also got a good amount of reading done in June. I finished up the Dungeon Anarchists cookbook, which is the third, maybe fourth, in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. And I do have the next book sitting in my TBR pile, but I needed a little bit of like a break. I really enjoyed the books, but they're beefy, and I needed something that was a little lighter, a little bit of shorter read. So I've made my way about quarter of the way through You Can't Spell Treason Without Tea, and I'm so loving that book. It's so clear why it's like one of the cornerstones of the cozy fantasy genre. I wish I'd picked it up sooner. Yeah, really enjoying that. And I'm also reading, I'm forgetting the title of it. I'll put it up here. But it is a collection of essays. It's a nonfiction about yarn and knitting, and really enjoying that. I do want to read a little bit more nonfiction. I love reading fiction as my like wind down time, but I find reading nonfiction, like trying to read that in little snippets throughout the day, it's easier to read nonfiction like in snippets, I feel like. And also I feel like it's like good for my brain. Like I'm learning a lot more things from nonfiction. And yeah, it's just like a little bit of a different kind of reading than fiction. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. I love nonfiction books about crafting, nature, sciencey stuff, not too heavy sciencey, but like kind of that like sciencey applied to everyday life. And I do enjoy the occasional biography or autobiography, but it tends to be I have to be super interested in that specific person. So those are a little bit, I feel like, harder to come by. But yes, if you've read any great nonfiction books that sound like something I would be into, let me know in the comments. So I would love to know, what have you been up to over the month of June? What have you been working on and creating? If you've worked on any of the patterns that I mentioned, please let me know. It's definitely been fun hearing about other people also working on similar things at the same time. Like it feels like, ooh, we're making this together. And it's been great, like, hearing feedback or ideas, or like, oh, keep an eye out for this in the pattern, or alternative ways to do some of the methods in a pattern. There have been a handful that I was like, I just bound this off and somebody mentioned something that I kind of want to go back and redo, but I don't want to undo this whole project. So yeah, that's been really fun, and definitely things that I've even if it's after the fact, I've kept that in mind for future things. Yeah, I love this little community that we're building here. Speaking of which, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe, because I make knitting content here on a regular basis. And you can also go on over to our Patreon and check out ways to directly support the channel. Thank you so much, patrons. All right, I will see you next time. Bye. Someplace I come